The Redefined podcast is part of the Win-Make Give podcast network. Hot diggity! Welcome to the Redefined podcast. My name's Erik Hatch, and we are here to talk about the great things that are happening with business people, but even more importantly, all the stupid mistakes that they have made. Oh my gosh, I love highlighting smart people doing dumb things. Isn't that great? And with us is Colton Whitney, Ken Doll, beautiful son of a gun out of Orange County, California. You beautiful bastard. How are you, Colton?
Every time I do these with you, I'm immediately reminded how terrible my energy is on everything that I do. So thank you for that. And I always love being here with you, man.
I had 2 sugar packets. I'm all fired up and ready to go. Colton, I wanna give you a moment in time as we talk about all the good, all the butt you're kicking. You literally sent me a message. I think it was yesterday or today. I forget when it was. But you're like, I'm at a new record. I'm at a new record. I'm at a new record. You're doing huge things with your real estate team. You're finding massive success. Brag to our audience. Tell them all the things that you're doing that are superb right now. And don't be shy. Don't be bashful. Don't be like, shucks darn. No, you're crushing some things. Share with the world what you're crushing.
We're definitely trying. Things that we have started to do well, in my opinion, and we're pretty harsh on ourselves and our processes. We are being very intentional with one, of course, how we are generating opportunities, the partnerships that we've created for our agents. And most importantly, it's one thing, and I've learned this the hard way, it's one thing to be able to provide opportunities. It's one thing to be able to give people leads, but then it's something completely different to be able to scale performance that makes those leads have a positive ROI. And that's one thing where I did this, and I know I see a lot of other team leads do this when our teams aren't producing and our teams aren't performing and they suck at lead generation and they suck at follow-up and they won't do this and they won't do that. It usually ends up coming back to our processes, the expectations are set, the training that we provided. So we became just obsessed with process. We've become obsessed with process that we know followed creates the results. And because of that, we've been really, really good at scaling performance with our partnerships, about being able to compound those transactions into more transactions. And because of that, we've been able to grow by about 100% each year for the last 5 years.
You said a lot of fancy words there. You sound smart. You look great. It's like a double threat already. I've seen you dance though, so we're gonna stop. We're gonna stop the talents there. Colton, you've built a machine. Yes,
We're working on it. It's getting better.
Don't tell me that we've had.
I feel like if you talked to me 3 years ago and showed us what we've had today, I would call it a machine.
Yeah.
Being where I'm sitting today, I still call it a dumpster fire.
Well, sure. Colton, have you ever worked in a restaurant?
I have not. Yes,
Okay.
I did actually when I was 15.
Okay. Well, I spent 8 years in the restaurant industry, and the grossest things happen behind the doors. The cooks, the dishwashers, all those things, the smells, the grime, and then all of a sudden a beautiful plate of food comes out, and the customers, they're like, "Oh, this is really beautiful. Everything must be figured out." No, it's a dumpster fire. It's a hot mess. Yeah. And I know you still have your battles and your challenges, but you said something in there that was so powerful. You're like, we've doubled 100% growth every year for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
You like Colton, you're 33 years old.
Yes. 33 as of next week.
Oh, well, hey, happy early birthday.
Thank you. It's just
32, soon to be 33. What a baby you are in this real estate industry. And yet you have more experience than most. You've retained great talent. Yes.
Yes.
You've helped a plethora of people change their stars and compound a bunch of cash and hopefully protect their time as well. Yeah. You're giving people career paths and training and systems in which if they follow the plan, if they follow the system, they're going to find success. Yes?
Yes.
You've doubled your business every year. You're now making more money than you maybe ever thought possible for a 32-year-old. Colton, what you're doing right now is no joke. But my gosh, it's been a sloppy mess to get here. Does that feel accurate?
Yes, it has.
Okay. As we stay in the bragging moment, just for another minute, what are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? Gosh, man, it's a good question. I should have an easy answer to that. I'm very hard on our stuff, so I'm usually not happy with any of it. I would say what I'm most proud of, it's our people. Like, and that's a cheesy bullshit answer that I know a lot of people are going to give. But you know our people. We've had people with us for 9 years now. Multiple of them. My director of operations, Holly, is second to none. I have people from all over the industry that are like, "How'd you get her?" I almost didn't hire her because I thought she was too expensive. So it's like there was no intentionality behind it. She was a referral from somebody I knew. My head ISA has been with me she's been with me for 9 years. Booney, my director of sales, has been with me for 8 years. I mean, we just have really great people who are committed to the company, who truly take ownership of its success or failures. When things are going bad, they give a shit. When things are going great, they're prideful. When things are getting turbulent, they're the first ones that jump on deck, grab their swords and their shields and say, let's do this. So if what I'm most proud of has nothing to do with the company itself, it's just the people that are operating and pushing the buttons and pulling the levers.
One of my favorite quotes is that great leaders give all the credit and take all the blame. And you just took the time in which we said, what are you most proud of? And you gave credit to everybody else. And that just speaks of your character. It's why the title of our podcast is redefining how people treat people. And you've obviously, although you've stumbled and fumbled your way forward, you've redefined how life can happen for them because of how you've treated them. And so I think we're going to see that woven through your stories here, Colton. But you had an unusual start into real estate and some big ups and downs. I don't want to steal your story. I want to sit back and be an active listener. So the microphone is yours, my dude.
Yeah. I started that little girl back there. She's actually going to be 16 in a couple of months, which is wild to think.
So hold on now, gang. If you're doing math, Colton's 32. His daughter is 15, almost 16. Yep. You were a typical MTV teenage pregnancy show. Yeah, with the affliction t-shirt and all, I'm sure.
16 and pregnant. There was a photo, and I'm so embarrassed to say, I had to have shown you this, because if this is by chance, the day my daughter was born, I have this long Justin Bieber, like, guy-lighted hair. I want to punch me in the face every time I see this photo. And I'm feeding her, and I look like a freak. I was a child. And I'm feeding her in my affliction t-shirt, my guy-lighted blonde, shaggy surfer hair.
You were a child douche. I love that. And yeah. I probably still own an Affliction t-shirt or two as well. And I nothing but love for Affliction. What a company. Hey, but nonetheless,
they killed it.
I mean, you were a kid. You were a 16-year-old dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Dude, I didn't get a girl to kiss me until I was 14. You had a kid. You had a kid at 16. What the hell was your life going through? Like, I know how you made the baby, but like, I'm curious about, like, afterwards, what kind of impact that had on your life.
To be honest, everybody always asks, were you scared? And like, there was definitely a moment of fear, for sure. I think there is at any age. I don't know my friends today who are in their 30s that find out they're going to be fathers. Like, we always have that, oh my gosh, can I do this type of thing? And I was scared, but honestly, I was excited. I was stoked. Once I finally got my parents to know, I was very concerned about telling them, but they were unbelievably supportive.
What do Mom and Dad Whitney say when you sit down and be like, hey guys, congratulations, you're going to be grandparents? Like, what's that reaction like?
So I didn't. I was too scared to tell them. My mom went to Mexico with some of her friends. My dad was staying back because he had a conference to go to. And I was waiting for my mom to leave to tell her. And so I told her, and she's like, I'm not going to lie to your dad. You need to tell him. I said, okay,
so
I will.
You ruined your mom's trip by telling her she's packing her bags and getting on a plane?
Yeah. Totally selfish move. Yeah. And so she says, you got to tell your dad. Next day she called me. She said, you haven't told him. I don't like lying to him. You have to. So anyway, my sister goes home one day, walks in the house, not knowing that he didn't know, and says, hey, Grandpa. And his face, she said, went white. And she goes, no, not me. And he goes, Nicole? And he goes, no. And then just this like defeated look. And he goes, Colton? And she goes, yeah. So anyway, I get a text, don't come home. Dad's pissed.
Well, and your dad, Colton, you're 5'9".
Yeah.
Probably your dad is like 6'5", isn't he?
He's 6'6", and I'm 5'10", goddammit. How
yeah,
dare you?
You know who says they're 5'10"? You know who says they're 5'10"? People that are 5'9".
5'9".
Yeah. So your dad is this tree trunk of a man standing 6'6", and you get a text saying, "Don't come home."
Yeah. Yep. And he's a big man. He's a gentle giant, but when he is angry, you do want to stay away from him. And thankfully, by the time I got home, I opened up the door. My dad was sitting there and I was terrified. I remember the garage door opened. I was waiting to see his feet. That didn't happen.
Just imagining him holding a baseball bat, like just, tree trunks of legs.
Walk through the garage, put my hand on, dude, I was shaking. I still remember I couldn't grab the remote. I was shaking. Couldn't grab the remote, the handle. And I turned it and I walked in and my dad was sitting there right in front of the door. And he had tears in his eyes. He wrapped me in his arms and said, "You're going to be an amazing father and we're here for you."
Whoa. I did not like your dad as you were scared to death and you were in a super dark time. I mean, not dark because being a parent is the greatest thing in the world, but my gosh, your whole world was changing and he chose to embrace you instead of discipline you.
Yep. He is a very good man. And
what did that teach you, man?
That my dad's the best.
Yeah.
it just, as a father, I've always said, and this has been my goal. If when I die, my daughter can say I was half the man of my father, I've won. My dad, anytime I talk about my dad, damn you. You talk about my family, you talk about my dad, my daughter, any of those people, it's a guaranteed way to get me to tear up. We've got some shit going on with him right now that is heartbreaking, but he's just a great man. And dude, they were supportive. I was a young kid and it's like, it was, not to mention, this was 2008. So the perfect time to get into real estate when you live in Las Vegas.
Well, so, I sense a bit of sarcasm there.
Yeah.
So you're 16 years old and you get into real estate?
I was 16. Fortunately, I had already graduated early because I grew up in a tiny little podunk town. I didn't like going to school and I just wanted out. And so I graduated 2 years early, thankfully, because that was already done. But then I had to wait.
You were a 16-year-old dad of one high school graduate?
Yeah.
That's now selling houses? I just want to pause for a moment. Would you buy ice cream from a 16-year-old? I think I would with confidence. Would you buy a real estate asset, like a $400,000 property from a 16-year-old who, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was,
how?
Well, so I tried, I watched MTV and I remember there was a story about Macaulay Culkin because I was like, cool, I'm going to start real estate. And my mentor at the time was like, dude, you're not 18. You can't, you got to wait till you're 18.
I thought you were going to say your mentor was Macaulay Culkin.
No. And there was a story about how his parents took all of his money. And so he had to emancipate himself so that he could become a legal adult, sign contracts, have control over his assets. And I remember watching this and I called up my dad and I was like, hey, dude, I got an idea. And he was like, what? And I was like, I think I can get emancipated. And at one, as a kid, not thinking anything of what that would mean to my dad, my dad's like, son, what? And so anyway, my dad was just super supportive. And so I went through the emancipation process, walked in, the judge had my dad and I sitting there. And I remember the judge smiling and he goes, I've never once had an emancipation case where the parent and the child were here together for the filing. And my dad laughed and he's like, yeah, my son wants to get into real estate early and he's not a patient kid. So here we are. And so anyway, the judge granted his first emancipation that he had ever granted. And I went to the real estate division and they said, we don't care what the emancipation says, you're not a legal adult. So we went after the division. By the time it was all finally said and done and the division agreed to let me get my license, it had taken about a year and a half and I was turning 18 right then before. So now if you get emancipated, you're good in Vegas if you want to be a 16-year-old who sells real estate.
Oh my gosh. So, I mean, I've known parts of your story, Colton, but it's so fun to tie it together with a little more depth here. I want to know what happens when you're 18 years old, you decide to be a realtor, you have the responsibilities of being a parent. What a What a trip that must have been. What did
Yeah.
your life look like then? What did your habits look like? Because there's a book called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. And it's really the framework of so many things that I view. And like our success in life comes from doing less dumb things. And we're accentuating the dumb things that you've done so that you can help other people out there to do less dumb things. And I'm curious, what are some of the really stupid things that you did? What are the things from 18 to 32 now that are just these like giant stumbling blocks for you?
If you've ever heard of those the 5 levels of learning, and the first one is what we all go through, and it's uninformed optimism. And it's when we're going to jump into real estate and we are going to get excited and we're going to make $1 million. And then you have what's called informed pessimism as level 2. And that's when we know how hard this is. We know it's not what we expected. We know that the business is going to be far more difficult. I wish I would have had better expectations.
What were your expectations walking in?
I was going to be rich. I was going to make a ton of money, or within my first year, I was going to sell a ton of houses, and I was going to make a ton of money right away. And thankfully, I did have an amazing mentor. And I do think that is by far one of the most important pieces to this. I've on paper, like I've always looked at my career as this shitty little race car that on paper probably shouldn't have ever even made it through its first lap. And it's like, but I've just been fortunate enough through you and through my very first mentor and through people that I've had throughout the stages of my career who are like the other race teams that just felt bad for me, and they spared their parts and they gave me, if you open up the hood to what we are today, there's Erik Hatch's team in there. There's Mark Pattison. There's Kyle Whistle. There's Frank Napoli. There's all these people who have just helped us stay in the race. And it's like we've just been super lucky, and this was not by design, that we just had people that didn't want me to fail. And they always gave me the motivation and the advice that I needed. So I was lucky to have a mentor. But dude, at that time, there was no leads. There was just foreclose on homes. There was short sales, and nobody was doing anything. And I was doing open house after open house, and I was trying to generate business, but there wasn't any. Finally got a deal. It was a short sale. It took 8 months to negotiate the short sale.
Was that your first deal? Was a short sale that took 8 months?
My first deal was a short sale. And when I got my, what should have been a check, it was actually an invoice because I owed money, because the short sale negotiation fee for this $32,000 condo that I had sold in Las Vegas, I was upside down and I owed money because the short sale negotiation fee was more than the damn commission.
So to get a commission check after 8 months, you literally had to pay money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you talk about the uninformed optimism into the informed pessimism. Informed pessimism was a reality check. Yeah.
I was firmly placed in informed pessimism. And honestly, this was a good thing because I was just so defeated. And thankfully, my mentor at the time, I didn't have any money. He paid the difference to the short sale negotiator, said, don't worry about it. But then I told him, I was like, dude, why are we paying this guy $1,000 or $1,500 to negotiate a short sale? I'll negotiate the short sales. And he was like, hey, if you want to do that, let's do it. So we started negotiating them in-house. And short sales really were the rocket fuel that ended up propelling us through 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, because we started doing loan modifications for free for people.
Okay.
People were charging attorneys were charging people that would never qualify $5,000 for a modification. And then they wouldn't get the modification. And then they would charge them again to do the bankruptcy. So they were just getting double whammy for people that were guaranteed not to do it. And this was Frank Sr.'s idea. He said, we're going to do free loan modifications. And we thought he was crazy. He said, I'm going to run TV commercials and I'm going to start generating. We're going to go against the attorneys who are screwing people over. And we didn't get it. The business model does seem crazy. We were already broke, barely making it. And fortunately, you get on TV in Las Vegas and say, I'm going to do your loan modification for free. The phones blew up. And we did. We set up a team. We negotiated modifications. However, we knew right away it was a HAMP modification program. The criteria was cut and dry. People just flat out didn't qualify. And for the people who didn't, we then listed their homes for short sales. And we started doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these a year.
Colton, have you watched the TV show Better Call Saul?
No.
Okay. Yeah. You literally just told your story. Let me give you the synopsis, the parallels, because it shot at me as you were talking. You were downtrodden, like you knew you were hungry, but the market wasn't providing the opportunities that you wanted. And that happened in Better Call Saul. And so what happened is he put out these cheesy local TV commercials in Albuquerque, New Mexico, about how to essentially, first he was targeting people to do their wills and was doing their wills and got quick cash for that. But then he found senior citizens were being taken advantage of by this corporation. And so he then targeted those senior citizens and built his career on cheesy commercials and finding a hole in the system.
Oh, that's funny.
And I mean, you guys are maybe a little less slimy and cheesy as what Better Call Saul is, but nonetheless, I wrote down the word as you were talking about innovative. Like you found your opportunity, regardless of what was happening in the market, regardless of whatever it may be. You're like, where can I make hay where the sun is shining? Does that feel accurate?
Yep. That was, and I didn't, yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
Well, no, I see so many people doing that now on teams with something like Zillow Flex. And you and I had a conversation about this offline right before we started to hit record, is that Zillow Flex is one of those things that is giving people opportunities and it limits the cash that you make. And it's not a long runway for it, but you're going to make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah.
And all this to be said, the only reason I'm convinced of it, Colton, the only reason why you pushed through and actually were successful is because you were a 16-year-old father and you had enough fire in your belly and fuel in your gas tank to say, I'm going to be relentless until I find success.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, look at now, being able to look back. At the time, it didn't feel like that. I just didn't have any other options. And it was, you could have
waited tables. You could have found a job washing cars,
That wasn't an option. And when I did, like, I could have done that. I just knew I was not going to be able to give her a life that I would have been proud to give her. And again, nothing against that, but for myself and what I wanted to provide for my daughter, that wasn't going to be the path to get me there. So yeah, now I do believe firmly, because every one of these people who you hear these stories, they've all went through some just crazy, and everybody that that has been through this, they have gone through some type of triumph. And it's like, hard times create hard people. And I do believe that. And the people who you see starting to suffer when the market tanks, like, I'm grateful for the hard times, because the hard times are what teach you that there is going to be light at the tunnel, even if I can't see it today. But as long as I just keep following the process, doing what I'm supposed to do, doing the activities unrelentlessly, not making excuses for on the days that I don't feel like I don't want to do it. And it's like, eventually, if you do the right things for long enough and you follow the process, the results will come. So that definitely
what a boring answer. You just said discipline and consistency. Like there's no magic pill, dude, right? This is just about discipline and consistency.
Yeah. Yep.
But I'm curious, you obviously over the last 15 years in real estate have done some really dumb things too. And I'm not talking about a lack of discipline and a lack of consistency. What are some terrible moves that you've made? What are some giant craps that have stumbled on your path? Because some people out there right now are in a similar situation like you. They're hungry, they're tenacious, they're jumping where the opportunities lie. But can you keep people from getting hit by some branches in their face? What are some things that you would exceedingly shout from the mountaintops that people should avoid?
The biggest mistake that I made, and again, none of these are going to be exciting answers. It's honestly, a lot of them are going to be the cliche BS, but they really are the answer. It's like, I wish I would have known what I wanted to build from the beginning, because I've dumb shitted my way through this. And it's like, I kept trying to do things that everybody else was doing. I kept trying to find ways. I'm like, okay, here's what they're doing. This is what we have to do. And like, now I see people starting to build teams just because it's cool to build a team, and teams are the big thing. And it's like, most people have absolutely zero interest in building teams. They don't have an interest in leading people. They don't have an interest in building systems and processes for those people to follow so that they can be successful. They don't enjoy educating. They don't enjoy accountability. They don't enjoy any of the things that it means to be a team. And then when you ask them, why are you building a team? They're like, oh, I got to get my time back. And you laugh because you're like,
that is the biggest freaking crock.
Yeah, I want to make millions of dollars and I want to get all my time back. And it's like, which again, that was me. And then we started, and you realize, oh my gosh, this is not at all. It's that unconscious incompetency, the conscious incompetence, like now we know it's that conscious competence where we now know what the process is for us to be successful with the team. And it isn't that you get your time back, and it's not that you get to make all this money. And I'm grateful that I did end up falling where I fell, because I do love what I'm doing. Yeah. Selling houses is not my passion at all. Meeting new clients and helping people find their dream home, that is not my passion in any way, shape, or form. I chose real estate just because I kind of had to. I didn't want to be a realtor. I wanted to be an attorney, or that was always something I wanted to do. But at 16, that just didn't become an option when I couldn't afford school and I had to put food on the table for my daughter. So knowing what I would want to build, and then up front, knowing how important it is to fall in love with processes. Because and I always equate everything out to like losing weight, because we all know that process. Everybody focuses on losing weight, but what we don't focus on is a process. And it's like Erik and I could be doing the same exact routine, but if I'm getting on and doing the cardio that we're all doing, which is part of the process, and Erik's putting it on a 12% incline and going at 4 miles an hour, he's spending his 30 minutes wildly different than I am on a flat plane at 1 mile an hour, barely breaking a sweat. And it's like, there's different levels to process. There's different levels to what works and what doesn't. And we weren't going deep enough with the processes that our agents needed to follow to become successful.
Are you really doing a 12-degree incline at 4 miles an hour?
I hate the stair step. I don't do that now. I do the stair step.
That's aggressively uphill. But yeah.
But it's the same thing where you have two agents who say, well, we're both holding open houses, and they're both patting themselves on the back. But one of those agents has been preparing for that open house for a week. They've door knocked the houses to the left, to the right, and in front. They sent out all the door drops and the invites to the 250 neighbors. They put up signs the night before or the morning of. They went up, they actually followed a process. It's going to drive track it. They're capturing the lead information by actually having a way to collect it into a database. There's good ways and bad ways to do everything. And we all start with our chapter 1 version, but so many people just never progress to chapter 2 and then chapter 3. And we just are constantly looking for the result without being obsessed over the process that's going to create the result.
Colton, you've grown a pretty incredible team. How big is your team today?
Now we have 45 agents.
That's obscenely huge. You're in Orange County, California. Your average price point is what?
It's down this year, but we're around $925 to $950.
Oh man, that's embarrassing. Down. Obviously you're taking big swings, you're doing big things, but I want to stick with the topic at hand, because I bring up those questions, those curiosities about your market, because you're not in a typical market. Orange County is not built like the rest of the world, or the rest of the country. And to have 45 agents, the only way you can get there is if you are, and to get 45 agents isn't tough. To retain 45 agents is a masterful art.
Yeah.
What mistakes have you made in retention, and what great things are you doing now to keep great people around?
Where did we start with retention? Is that what you asked?
Yeah. Well, my guess is you brought a bunch of people around because you thought they would solve your problems. And now you're learning your job is to help them solve their problems.
When we made it, the big shift was when, and it was a decision, and it was a intentional one, and it was a super scary one. But it's like, all right, am I willing to make 100% of my success dependent on their success? Mm-hmm. And that, I firmly believe, is the only way to make these things work. Because if, like I see it all the time, there's team leads building teams, but then they're selling 95% of the team's production. Yep. They're busy. They can't build systems. They don't have the people. And then the other problem is when you try to step out too quick, now your production's not taken into the equation. And now you can't even afford to build the infrastructure and the people and the systems and the processes. It's like, this is why this leap doesn't work. And this is why your production partner model literally is what enabled this to happen, and to happen quickly, was because I was able to maintain the profitability of being in production while getting my free time back as if I wasn't, so I could focus on the systems and the people and this and everything that we were doing. Making my success dependent on theirs makes me highly invested in, one, making sure that we have the opportunities, but two, making sure that we have tactical agents that know how to progress the ball down the field when we throw it to them. And then even more importantly from there, you can have the opportunities, you can have the training to have tactical agents, but then you got to have the support that once they finally get the deal in escrow, you have educated, informed agents that know how to keep the train on the tracks, how to keep the deal together, how to deal doctor, how to problem solve. And no matter how good you are at training and objection handling and getting agents to that point, as an agent, you don't know what you don't know. And when all those those negative effects try to pull the train off the tracks, we now have to have support within the team that's designated to make sure that they're there to keep it on the tracks. And we didn't do any of that stuff. It's literally, we've just had to create it as we realize there's a need for it. And when you're not making any money, if they're not selling any houses, you'll be highly, highly, highly focused to ensure that you're giving them the best environment to do so.
What you just described, Colton, the word blueprint just shot to my mind, and it's a word we use a lot in our coaching calls together or in connecting on things. You have a blueprint for success today, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. When you started a team years ago, did you have a blueprint for success?
No, not at all. Yeah, show up and do what I do, idiots.
I love that you call them idiots.
That was how you felt. You're like, just do what I'm telling you. Why aren't you doing
it? Follow my lead. But the problem is you were starting on chapter 7 and they were on chapter 1, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Our mutual buddy in our mastermind and coaching client, just awesome guy, his name's Jim Black. He said to me last week, he said, I need people to do what I did, not do what I do. And what you did when you started out is what nobody saw. Colton, there are people listening to this right now being like, this 32-year-old kid is running a multi-million-dollar business. He must have had a golden spoon handed to him. He must have had an easy path. And they don't see the climb. They don't see the 8 months it took for you to pay your first commission check. They don't see what it's like to be a teenage dad. People don't see all that stuff. And we're in fact quiet to talk about it. I want to encourage you as a friend and a brother to get louder about where you've come from, because people will understand why you're worth following.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, please. I want to clarify here too, because literally I was the team lead that I hate today. And it's that team lead who's like, come on, morons, do that. And you hear it. You see these people in their masterminds and you hear how they talk about their team and you hear about the complaints and and it's always their fault. And we're the first one. But like when the market was great from 2019, 21, 22, 23, like when the market was great, they were the first ones to step up. But as soon as the market starts to tank, they're the first ones to start shining a light on their team, blaming it on them. And you have been an exceptional leadership coach for me in the sense that you've taught us what it means to be a real leader. You've taught what it means to actually show up and lead people and meet them with empathy and understand where they're at. And it's like, there's so many people, and I was one of them, who you expect them to be on your level immediately, but then you forget, hey, there's those there's 5 levels, the 5 levels of learning. And you can't expect people to skip the repetitions and the time that you're able to go through and then create the same type of mastery. And that's where, when you really start to become more understanding of the process and how long it takes for them to become good at what they do, you can start building processes that will shorten that runway for them to get to where they want to go. But we just did all of that wrong from the very beginning. And I'm sure you talked to me from 3 years. I'll tell you everything we're doing today is probably wrong.
What's interesting, I wrote a leadership book in 2016 called Play for the Person Next to You. And when I wrote it, I'm like, oh, that's it. I got it figured out. And the moment it printed, I'm like, oh man, I'd change that thought now and I'd adjust that. And I've heard John Maxwell speak in that same accord, is like, when he writes a book, it's the best book he's ever written until he writes the next one. Because it's this continual learning phase. And I love the fact that you're saying that you haven't arrived, that you're not there yet, and that you're continuing to go and grow on this journey. But you've mentioned a couple of times here these 5 levels of learning. And I want to make sure that I capture these. The first is uninformed optimism, right?
So it's really like, it's unconscious incompetence is what it's called, but it's basically uninformed optimism. Like, you just don't know what you don't know. You haven't gone through this process before. And then the second. So go ahead and do the next one.
No, then you had informed pessimism.
Yep. So conscious incompetence. Now you don't know what you don't know. And you're having, like, you hear agents with objection handling and role playing. they know, and you hear them get nervous and they start stuttering and they fall all over themselves and they're having to just literally read it basically off of the script. And you got to get them through that to the third level, which is conscious competence. And it's where now you know what you're supposed to say. Now you know the script, you know how you're supposed to do it. But God forbid, if anybody throws a curveball at you that script hasn't prepared you for, you're going to fumble all over the place. You're not going to know how to handle it. And it's like, that's where we really, and the only ways to get through it is through the real life learning and the real life repetitions. And that fourth level, which is the level that we strive to get everybody to, is the unconscious competence. And it's like, now you can do this in your sleep. Like right now, Erik, how you do your coaching calls, you have unconscious competence in your ability to navigate me through my problems. Mm-hmm. Like, and I've heard you do it through other people. And there is a framework that you use that you have learned that navigates these conversations. But the only way you've gotten this good is because you've gone through the repetitions. You've done however many hours of these calls that you've done.
Right.
And it's like, it's the same thing with role playing and objection handling. We had Robbie T on this call and he played his very first phone call ever. I can guarantee you it would be terrible. But now he's excellent.
He was so bad when he started calling. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
He's worked through those levels. And then that fifth level is where you're at and where I'm striving to be. And it's that ability to transfer that skill set to other people. And that's the 5 levels. And like that, honestly, is one of the frameworks that we've used that's made me and our agents more understanding of where they're at. It's like, hey, don't stress. Right now, you're on level 2. We just got to get you to level 3. And once we get you to level 3, you got to get to level 4. But if you're on level 1 and you're watching one of our level 4 agents, you haven't gone through what they've been through to get to where they're at. So like, you can't skip those steps unless you're the anomaly. And I've not ever met that anomaly that's been able to skip those steps and just come into this thing ready to go.
You know, one of the mistakes that we've made as a company is we started these micro teams, kind of teams within teams. And so some people have pods, whatever you're going to label it. We took our top agents and we elevated them to be leaders. And it made great sense on paper. And the problem was we abandoned the blueprint. Because people had proximity to, and whoever they have the most proximity to is who they're going to follow. It's the rhythm that they're going to do. And we had an agent, still have an agent. His name's Tyler Hines, probably the nicest, most charming person you're ever going to meet. He never once in the history of this business did traditional lead generation, never sat down and hammered through a CRM. And instead, he's just like genuinely invested in people and makes people feel warm. So much so that 8 years into the business now, this guy's gone from being a showing partner to an agent to leading a team to now one of the most successful agents in the history of our company. And he will sell on average 40 to 50 deals from his sphere each year. Yeah. That is an inordinate amount of deals that he's procuring and bringing in. And so as we lined up new agents with him and they're following Tyler, they're not getting even an ounce of the success because what they're doing is they're studying like, hey, this guy's not following a blueprint. He's just like a genuinely nice guy. So I bet if I'm a genuinely nice guy, I'm gonna get this same kind of success. Yeah. And they are genuinely nice people, but when they're not following an actual plan that's repeatable and duplicatable, they can't get the results. And what they don't see is that Tyler was a showing partner for a year and worked on his sphere every day. And then that he's at a coffee shop texting 20 people a day. They just think he's going to coffee and they think that's how they're going to be successful. And so I'm led saying like, oh, shoot, sometimes we derail our own success by trying to find success through other people. Yeah. And you had mentioned, Colton, about your big 3. You have Holly and Brittany and Booney, 3 people that have been with you as ride or dies. They've seen you at your worst. They're with you at your best and everywhere in between. Why have they not abandoned you? Because
I've asked.
Yeah, it's a serious question. Most people right now are starving for the right who's, and you have the right who's, which is one of the reasons you're successful. But why have they not abandoned you?
So I've actually had to ask that before, because of course we did and we're not going to get into the story, but went to Vegas, started doing well in Vegas and hated Vegas, hated the heat, hated the people, hated the lifestyle, wanted to go to Orange County, knew there was great weather.
This is the worst Viva Las Vegas commercial I've ever heard.
Yeah, I hate Vegas. If you're from Vegas, move. It's just hot and it's cold and it's miserable. It sucks. It's ugly. You pull in, it just looks like a prison covered in dirt. And so anyway, I finally moved to Orange County and started it. That was a whole new struggle. And then we started doing good. And then there was a lawsuit, and that dismantled the business. And it got to a point where, one, I was bankrupt, and everything that I had been working my ass off for 10 years to build was completely destroyed. I had to fire Brittany. I had to lay her off multiple times. Booney wasn't being given any opportunity. And I just remember, like, Brittany always said, hey, the minute you're back, I'm back. And it's like, okay, we'll see if that happens. And Booney, I just remember sitting in a conference room with him one day, and I was like, hey, man, why are you still here? Because everybody else had quit. Everybody else, I understood it and told them, guys, I can't give you opportunities. You should quit. And Booney said, dude, I just know what we're capable of. I know what we're going to build. I know it's down the road, and I'd be an idiot to leave before we get there. And it's like, dude, that is the type of person who, God, I hope I can just continue to fill this company with people like him. And they're one in a million. And then Brittany, when we could afford to bring her back, she was back that day. And it's like, there's just those people who should have left, but they were super bought into the vision. They were bought into what we were building, and they were committed to making sure we got to that finish line. And dude, that is, Jesus, I can't be more appreciative of that type of person and that type of mindset.
There's a subtle nuance with what you said there, Colton. And that is, you had a vision so big that people were drawn to it. I think vision is quietly held by too many people. If you have a clear, big, awesome, amazing vision, I mean, it'll find like-minded people. You're surrounded by like-minded people, and they could have gone and ran elsewhere, but your vision was so big that they saw their life lived out in it.
Yeah.
Pretty special.
I'm grateful for it. And again, it wasn't intentionally done that way. I didn't have a plan to make sure that they saw that. Like, it was just, they saw it and they were the right people for it. And again, like, when we talk about mistakes, and this is one for anybody who's looking to build anything, whether it's a micro team, a mega team, anything in between, it's like and I know you're the same way. I'm the same way. And I've really had to be intentional about not being this way. Is people are inevitably going to have a different vision than you. And people inevitably aren't always going to be on our rocket ship. And sometimes they're going to leave our world and go into another world. And it's hard, and it's freaking painful, and it sucks because we have the emotional ties to it. But one of the things that I've really been intentional with, because it happens. Like, dude, we have teams in our market right now that are offering to pay their Zillow Flex fees and give them this and give them that. And it's like, we can do that too, but who am I firing? What system am I getting rid of? What perk am I going to eliminate? Which client events are we going to cancel? It's like, we can do it too, but we can't offer all these things and do that. And it's like trying to be okay with that day inevitably when, hey, I'm sorry, but this isn't working here, and being okay with it, and then still genuinely cheering for their success. Because what I found in this is the people, when they leave and when the grass isn't greener, they come back when you've left the door open like that, and when you haven't handled it in what I now see as an inappropriate way. But it's happening. Like, we're starting to see this shakeup. You and I talked about it before you hit record on this. It's like, now there's teams hunting our people and knowing what our setup is and just saying, I'm going to make you more money. And it's like, we got to be detached from the expectations and the outcomes and just keep focusing on our processes. It's going to keep building what we're trying to build.
You maybe have made some of these mistakes before, and I know I have, is when we put our value proposition on the leads and the split for our folks, it is a losing bet every time, every single time. And you've created a world because either you're going to lose or they're going to lose. It's not a win-win situation. It's not a true partnership. I've shared this with you and a lot of the people in my social media world, but I joined Place to partner with Ben Kinney and Chris Suarez and Chris Stewart, because I think that I can go farther with the right partnership. I think when you're chasing after the right split and you're chasing after the place that's going to give you the most leads, again, somebody's going to lose. And so, Colton, you're at a situation now where you know what you can provide, and you know it's going to give the other person the best results, both with the time in their life, the money in their life, and the chances for them to win and change their stars. And You've gone from a 16-year-old, just post-pubescent boy, and now the father of an almost 16-year-old, a guy that's leading 45 agents and a handful of admin, somebody who is impacting your brokerage EXP on such a high level, somebody that is doing huge things. I've said this before, I'll say it again. You're going to be my first $1 billion coaching client, and it's going to be so fun to see you get there. But I want to ask one final question as we look to wrap here, okay? Finish this statement for me. If I were to do it all over again, what would you do?
I would have found proximity to the right people right out of the gate. When I started doing that, again, I was this person, the ego, I know my way. I didn't even want to hire a coach because I know what I'm doing. And I just learned by default and by accident that holy shit, when you're surrounded by collaborative people and you have proximity to people who will give you what they want to give. And this isn't a real or an EXP thing. This applies to my business before any of these models ever existed. It's helped. But Frank Napoli Sr., my first mentor, I had somebody who took ownerships of my successes or my failures, who genuinely cared and collaborated and shared with me everything that he did to succeed. And I wish I would have been more intentional with that. When I start a new lead generation, I don't think and try to come up with my own best idea. I find the 5 best geographic farmers or the 5 best onboarding and training. I'm going to go find the best, and I'm going to go steal everything that they're willing to give me and implement it. Proximity by far is the most powerful tool that any of us can embrace.
I know we've talked about this book before, but it's the book Who Not How, and that it sounds like your success didn't come from the right hows, although you've talked about systems and processes. It's really come from alignment with the right who's. So that's pretty special.
The systems and the processes still comes down to the people that are running them. It's like, I can throw you the keys. My daughter, her first driving class is going to happen this week. If I gave her the keys to an F1 race car, she'd put it into the first corner and total that thing within seconds. It's not the car. It's not the systems. It's not the process. It's the person driving it. And it's like, no matter how great your systems are, no matter how great your environment, your culture, at the end of the day, it's only going to be as good as the person capable of driving it. And that is always going to come down to the who.
Colton, you are one of those who's in my life that I am proud to be aligned with. And you are the inaugural guest on the Redefine podcast. My man, thanks for sharing your heart, your ups and downs. Folks, if you like Colton, you should find him on Instagram. You'll connect with everything there. It's Colton_Whitney, WHITNEY. You'll find Colton Whitney on the Instagrams. Follow along what he's doing. This man is wicked smart and an incredible dude. Until next time, thanks for tuning into the Redefine podcast. My name's Erik Hatch of Hatch Broker by Real and Hatch Coaching. I put my name on everything, so watch out. I'll name you Hatch as well. We'll catch you next time.